Welcome to today's edition of the 2025 Rome and Floyd County High School Football Preview Show Series, presented by Advent Health Redmond. WLAQ Sports sits down with each area head coach to discuss the upcoming season. Here are your hosts, Matt Davis and Ian Griffin.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to our Darlington Tigers football preview with Darlington head coach Wayne Groves. We're happy to have you with us. And, Coach, we appreciate you taking time out of your day. I know it's a busy time of year for you, so thanks for being here with us.
Yeah, shoot, this is always fun. You know, football is among us. We've been working at it for a long time, and so going to give the fans a little preview of Northwest Georgia football, and I appreciate what you guys do for supporting us and supporting Northwest Georgia football. We're 2 weeks, we're rolling.
Heck yeah. Well, it's our privilege to do it, and we'll jump right into the conversation. Let's start by looking back at 2024. The Dirty 30 were such a gritty band of brothers with a penchant for the dramatic finishes, of course, from the adversity of dealing with injuries, the highs of the big wins. What were your key takeaways from last season that are going to make the Tigers better in 2025?
Well, last year it gives our kids a ton of confidence, in the fact that, you don't have to be the biggest players. You don't have to have the most depth and a huge roster number to be successful and to compete at this game at a high level. And so our roster number has improved. We're not the Dirty 30 this year. We're the Filthy 40. We've got a 41-man roster this year, so we got a few more guys out there and been working, ever since the end of December, the 1st of January. So, and a bunch of returners. There's probably about 25 guys that stepped on the field in some capacity out of those 41. So our kids are confident. They understand the offense, defense, special teams, schemes and systems. And so it gives a lot of momentum going into the season, and I think our kids will be prepared.
Coach, replacing seniors always is a challenge, but one of the remarkable things about last year's team was the leadership that you saw, not just from your juniors, but even underclassmen as well. So you've had a lot of contribution from a lot of different, classes. So how has your team grown from a leadership standpoint, and who are some of the players that really stand out from that leadership perspective that we're talking about?
Well, we have new leaders step up every single day. And so what we try to, tell the kids is the first part of being a leader is to lead by example. And that's not the main way to influence others. I tell them that's the only way to influence others. So, that junior class is pretty big. There's like 14 players in that class. And so them guys becoming seniors, they've done a really good job, an outstanding job, actually. Guys like Miles Twyman, Bryson Jones, Jace Donaldson, even guys like, Bodie Powers are very vocal and practices very well too. So, every day we get more guys step up. We want a lot of Chiefs. We don't want a lot of little Indians. So the more leaders we have, the more leaders we'll keep developing on the team. And, you get them all working together and pulling in the right direction. You can improve every day with that. So I've been pleased with our leadership and those seniors. It'll be our captains, Bryson Jones, Jace Donaldson, and then Miles Twyman have done a really good job for us.
Excellent. Well, Coach, as you enter year 3, if you can believe that, it's already year 3 at the helm of the Tigers, what have you personally learned from these first 2 seasons that have made you a better coach as you continue to build this program?
Well, just like any, we ask the players to constantly get better in the off season. As coaches, we do the same. We go visit colleges, we go visit and go to football coaching clinics and meet with other teams in clinic and just try to improve ourselves. So, with that, every program that I've been in, the 6 different places I've been, each one has challenges. Each one has positives. The challenges may be, you don't have a very big booster club. Some may be, you've got, so many kids, they're hard to navigate. At Darlington, we have a smaller roster, but there's a lot of positive in the fact that, our kids are dedicated. They're going to show up on time. They're going to do everything we ask them to do. They're going to do it to the best of their ability. We feel like we've got it dialed in. We always constantly talk as coaches. We want to have a perfect balance of, we want to do enough to get the team ready and to push them and to make them tough and accountable and all that. But we also want them to be able to have some social time in a summer. We don't want to burn them out before the season gets started. So we feel like, at a smaller school, smaller roster, we've kind of dialed in how we want to operate our season, operate, our summer program and our OTAs and all that. And we feel like we got a good plan and we've had a good summer.
And speaking of that, Coach, before we go to our first break here, you referenced your coaches. So I wanted to make sure that we talked about that a little bit here right out of the gate because you were talking about all the work that y'all put in to get ready for the season. So tell us about your coaching staff this year and a little bit about those guys, if you don't mind.
Well, the first thing I'll say about my coaches is, man, they're all great guys, and we have a great atmosphere and culture in our coaches' office. You know, I love to be around our assistant coaches. Mitch Jordan started, last month, our new athletic director, and one of the first things he says, man, you've got a great staff. You've put together a great staff, and that made me feel really proud because, I think those coaches really take pride in doing a good job and developing relationships with the kids and that kind of thing. But, right now on offense, our assistant head coach, Mark Loudermilk, the milkman, who's a Northwest Georgia, I call him a Northwest Georgia legend, but he's coaching our offensive line. He's our offensive coordinator. Hayden Privet is coaching our quarterbacks. He actually played for Coach Loudermilk at Cedartown when Coach Loudermilk ran the flex bone triple option offense. So to have his experience, someone that's been there, that's done that at that position is really good. So he's coaching the quarterbacks and the B-backs. Nehemiah Reddish is coaching the running backs, the A-backs. Alex Abels, who we hired full-time at Darlington, who's been with us for 6 years, he's going to coach the receivers. And then Bryant Powers is going to coach the tight ends, and he'll help some on the defensive side of the ball too. So that side, and then on defensive side, we're kind of a smaller staff. Jamarcus Chapman coaches our defensive line. And myself, I coach the linebackers. Nehemiah Reddish helps with the outside backers just to be an extra set of eyes there and helps me there. And then Coach Patrick Collier coaches the DBs. So, we're a small staff. I don't know how some of these people operate with like 22 coaches on their staff. I think you just get too many egos, you get too many opinions and all that. But I think our staff is small, but it is very quality staff that does a great job.
We've got Coach Wayne Groves with us, the head coach of the Darlington Tigers, getting ready for Season 3 to begin here in a matter of weeks. Hard to believe it's that time of year already. And that brings us to our first break. You're listening to the Darlington Tigers football preview show with head coach Wayne Groves. We pointed out, brought to you by Advent Health Redmond. And we're going to take a break. We'll come back with more after a quick message here from our sponsors. We're glad to have you with us.
When you're smiling, when you're smiling, and the whole world smiles with you. When you're crying, you bring on the rain. Stop your sighing, won't you be happy again? When you're smiling, keep on smiling, and the whole world smiles.
Never ever stop reaching for what makes you feel whole. Advent Health. Feel whole.
Looking for an affordable, convenient way to jumpstart your career? At Georgia Northwestern Technical College, we make education work for you. With hands-on training, many tuition-free programs through the Hope Career Grant, plus a 99% job placement rate means you'll be ready to fill in-demand jobs. Don't wait. Get the skills you need for the job you want. Visit gntc.edu today and start building your future.
Are you shopping for a new car, truck, or SUV? Riverside Auto Group has a location to meet your needs. Browse their selection online at riversideautogroup.com or visit with them in person at Riverside Chevrolet GMC in Rome, Riverside Toyota in Rome, Riverside Nissan in Rome, or Riverside GMC Cadillac in Cartersville. Locally owned and operated by the Welburn family since 1974. That's Riverside Auto Group.
All right, welcome you back. We are excited to continue our conversation here with the head coach of the Darlington Tigers. Coach Wayne Groves is in the building with us today, and Coach, we'll just go ahead and jump back into the conversation with our next question. But give us a little breakdown on how you continue to develop your players from the end of the season. I know it takes a little time to reflect and wind down a little bit, but you jump right back into building your team and get ready for the upcoming season. So tell us a little bit about what happens, that sequence after one season ends and you start preparing for the next one.
Gotcha. Okay, so the season ends, hopefully you're playing at the end of November, 1st of December, and playing playoff football. But when the season ends, we're going to finish the semester out through to the Christmas break in the weight room. We're not going to do any football after the season ends. So we're just going to focus on our compound movements, our bench squats, and power cleans, our dips, our lunges, military presses, rows, pull-ups, chin-ups, that type of thing. And stay away from kind of the agilities, stay away from, the plyometrics, and just focus on, trying to get big and strong going into and finish the semester going on into the Christmas break. We come back from Christmas break and we really crank the weight room up. We're going to lift 3 days a week, and then we do 2 days a week for the first 8 weeks. We do speed training. We start with our speed and agility program and get them going with that. That'll take us all the way to spring break, which our spring break at Darlington is a little early. It's usually the 2nd or 3rd week of March. Then when we come back, we drop the speed and agility stuff. We keep focusing on our lifts, introduce agility, still some agilities, plyometrics in the weight room, lifting 3 days a week. And then we're going to take 2 days and we're going to start doing our 4-on-1 position training work where our kids start learning their individual skills at their offense and defensive position. That'll take us all the way to spring practice. At spring practice, we're going to do our 10 practices, a full pad practice. We're going to get base offense, defense installed, and then give the kids 2 weeks off. We come back, now we get into summer practice. We get into our OTAs. And so first week of June, we go 4 days a week. Kids come in at 8:30. They position meet, offense and defense, to start installing, learning their position, going over with the practice plan, watch film from the previous day. Then we're going to lift weights for 45 minutes, and then we're going to go out on the field and practice for about an hour and a half in helmets. We'll get 4 weeks of that in June. We come back from July, and now that's where we are. We're in our 3rd week now, and so we're in acclimation period now. So acclimation for us, we're doing what we call Super Tiger testing. It's the big competition we do at the end of the summer where our kids compete in 9 different events, 9 categories, all football specific. They're testing on the bench, squat, power clean. Max's right now, they're doing a 10-yard dash test, a 40-yard dash test, a 20-yard shuttle, pro shuttle, 5-10-5. They're doing an L drill, and then on Thursday, we'll finish up the Super Tiger with a 1.5 mile run on Thursday morning. And so they get points for how they score. We keep track of over the years how athletes have done, who's been the top guys over the years. And then we give awards at the end of the summer. So after our scrimmage next Friday against Mount Perrin at 7:30, which will be at home, the next day we'll have picture day. We'll have summer awards. We'll have a big barbecue kickoff lunch where we bring all the cheerleaders, all their parents, brothers, sisters, all the football players, parents, brothers, sisters. We'll have a big barbecue lunch after picture day. We'll give out summer awards for Champions Club, which is perfect attendance. We give out top 10 for Super Tiger testing, who scored the best. We'll give out class champions in freshman, sophomore, junior, senior class. And then we'll give out the overall champion. And those guys will have opportunities to carry flags out for us, whether it's a skull and crossbones flag or American flag. And they'll get their picture in the program for being Champions Club or being one of the top Super Tiger guys. So
that's a lot. I bet it just wears you out just hearing that schedule.
It's a lot, but it's what the best programs do, and we feel like we've kind of dialed ours in pretty good, our plan. And then the following week, next Monday we put on the full pads, and then we're in scrimmage prep. So we got 4 days of prep. Mount Perrin comes to Darlington to scrimmage next Friday. We'll have a week with no game, and then so we'll have 2 weeks to get ready for Mount Vernon after that. And so it's here among us, So the things that we do in the off season, the things that we do in spring practice, the things we do during the summer, it's all necessary to get us to this point where we get our team ready to play.
Well, Coach, people who follow your show on this station and have watched our previews in the past, they might know this, but a lot of people don't know. You're not only the head coach, the defensive coordinator, but you are the strength and conditioning coordinator as well. You just talked a lot about the motivation that you use with the Super Tiger and all of that, but I'd like to know how you map this out and plan it, because it's an evolution when it comes to how you do strength and conditioning training. So how do you keep yourself, I guess continued education for you, because I know you take it very seriously.
Yeah. I mean, we just, I come home in the evenings in the off season and I just read a lot. You know, I order different books on, you know, speed training, plyometric training, strength and conditioning, you know, for multiple sports. And I just constantly just try to stay on the cutting edge and just find if there's a better way to do things, you know, I want to do it. You know, if we're, you know, sometimes just to confirm the things that we are doing are the right things to do. And so, you know, there's a lot of thought and process put into what we do in season, out of season, you know, with our strength conditioning program. But, you know, the goal is to make the kid's body the most supreme mechanism as possible. You know, that's what, you know, the textbook will tell you, you know, but, you know, we have a good year-long plan on how to handle them in season, out of season. You know, and we're always going to, you know, emphasize what I call the 5 absolutes of strength conditioning, that speed, strength, flexibility, agility, and then explosive power. You know, you got to lift, you got to run, you got to jump, you got to change direction, you got to pull things, you got to row things. You know, if you do that, you'll get kids stronger. You got to work on flexibility so that they can bend, and, you know, you got some injury prevention there. And if you do those things, you'll get kids better.
Well, I would imagine there's some things that don't really necessarily change that much in terms of how you approach that and some of the key components are towards the strength and conditioning. But obviously things evolve and things change, and you mentioned constantly reading and updating your approach to those sorts of things. So since you were a player a while back, how have those things changed the most? What would you say is different about the way that you trained as a player versus how you train your players today? How has that evolved the most, would you say?
I think when I was in high school, it was more, you know, I wouldn't say player led, but, you know, we'd come in the summer and you just signed in, you know, the old honor system, and then they would put a workout on the board and you did it, you know, and then that was kind of what you did in June, and end of July you'd come in and then you'd start kind of working out as a team. The thing that we do is everything is structured. It's, you know, it's on, you know, we're kind of old school. In fact, we do things on the whistle. So when we blow the whistle, we're doing a squat workout. You know, they have 30 seconds to get the weight on the bar, complete the reps, and then get to a next station. So we have different stations set around. You know, used to just kind of one guy lifting, you know, 4 or 5 guys standing around watching, drinking water. You know, we don't do that. Everything is high tempo, high paced. We try to treat it just like a football game in the weight room as far as the tempo and, you know, the work to rest ratio that we get. So just those kind of things that are different, you know. But, you know, the bench squats and the power cleans, you know, I don't think you'll ever get those out of football. You know, everybody's going to always do those. It's just, you know, what else are you doing to, you know, make sure your kids are safe, make sure that they're, you know, doing things for some injury prevention, you know, to keep them healthy throughout the season.
And you kind of touched on this a little bit already, but the season, obviously, you mentioned, is getting here quick. So talk a little bit about where you are right now in the life of your team as you prepare for the opening game. Does the intensity and whatnot, you mentioned the acclimation period, those sorts of things, does that kind of build as you get closer, or what does that look like?
It does. So, you know, start of the summer, you know, our practices are maybe on the field about an hour. You know, as we get into the end of June, you know, we kind of stretch those out, hour and 15, hour 20, hour and 30 on the field. You know, now we're about, you know, we're in acclimation, so we can have 2 hours on the field. So we're to the point now we're in acclimation. You know, we're building to put those full pads on, and it still won't be a problem with our kids. Our kids show up all summer long. This is our we finished today our 26th, you know, workout that we've been out in the heat every day, you know, and they've already lifted their weights. They've had their position meetings. So we're out on the field, and so we're acclimated. You know, our kids are acclimated, and so, you know, now you get into July, you start adding special teams, which extends your practice a little bit, and, you know, you want to make sure that you're solid in all phases of the game there. So that's where we are. We're to the point where, you know, base defense is installed. You know, we've added the wrinkles and the change ups. We've added blitzes and that kind of thing, and now we're perfecting those things, and then we're adding the special teams aspects and getting ready for the scrimmage next week.
Well, that brings us to our second break. Time is flying by here, but you're listening to the Darlington Tigers football preview show, or watching, and this is head coach Wayne Groves with us, and brought to you by Advent Health Redmond. We're going to take our next break. We'll come back and have one final segment after these messages. We'll return.
When you're smiling, when you're smiling, and the whole world smiles with you. When you're crying, You bring on the rain. Stop your sighing. Won't you be happy again when you're smiling? Keep on smiling and the world will smile.
Never ever stop reaching for what makes you feel whole. Advent Health. Feel whole.
Looking for an affordable, convenient way to jumpstart your career? At Georgia Northwestern Technical College, we make education work for you. With hands-on training, many tuition-free programs through the Hope Career Grant, plus a 99% job placement rate means you'll be ready to fill in-demand jobs. Don't wait. Get the skills you need for the job you want. Visit gntc.edu today and start building your future.
Are you shopping for a new car, truck, or SUV? Riverside Auto Group has a location to meet your needs. Browse their selection online at riversideautogroup.com or visit with them in person at Riverside Chevrolet GMC in Rome, Riverside Toyota in Rome, Riverside Nissan in Rome, or Riverside GMC Cadillac in Cartersville. Locally owned and operated by the Welburn family since 1974. That's Riverside Auto Group.
And welcome back to our Darlington Tigers football preview with head coach Wayne Groves, brought to you by Advent Health Redmond. We're excited to be sitting with the head man for the Darlington Tigers, and the season is almost upon us. So let's start talking about what we can expect when your Tigers take the field. I want to go back by talking about your quarterback room. That's where I'd like to start. Sammy Konchesky off to college, but his injury, while devastating at the time, provided some much-needed opportunity for some young guys. Let's talk about your quarterbacks. Who can we expect to see under center?
Well, these guys have been working since end of February, with quarterback school and, doing some off-season 4-on-1 workouts with our quarterback coach to get ready. But three of them have taken snaps this summer, and that's Levi Duggan, that's Jace Donaldson, and that's Matthias Sale. So Levi's a rising, he'll be a sophomore. Jace Donaldson, of course, he was the region athlete of the year last year. He played corner, he plays running back, receiver, he kind of does it all, and taking snaps at quarterback. And then Matthias Sale is a freshman who was a really good middle school player for us last year, and he's kind of a utility athlete guy. He plays a little running back, plays a little B-back. He can play linebacker. He could even play safety if we needed to play safety. So those three guys, Levi Duggan seems to be the one that's kind of the front runner. But, with Jace, being as athletic as he is, he brings a dynamic that is a little bit different there to that position. But we got to have a guy that is athletic to operate our offense, and so all three of those guys will be perfectly capable. But we've been really pleased with all of them's development this summer.
Well, Coach, obviously we're replacing some great seniors, but playmakers Miles Twyman, Jace Donaldson, you've already mentioned those guys a couple of times. They're back. You've built some much-needed depth on the line. And then also, your second year running the triple option. So these guys have had the reps at playing that style of football and scheme in terms of your offense. So what are your expectations for the Tigers offense going into this new season, 2025?
Yeah, well, I expect our offense to really operate, like a well-oiled machine. There's 8 players that started last year that are returning. There are 9 players that played a lot, but 8 of them that are returning starters. We lost Sammy, the quarterback, and we lost Trenton Moore at receiver, and then Sam 20 that played left tackle. And then we got guys that all played on the offensive line. 5 guys: Lane Braxton, Bryson Jones, Evan Parton, Ty Wood, Colton Moman. All those started a game. So then Miles Twyman back at B-back. You got Bodie Powers and Jace, back at A-back. Nate Konchesky's out there playing receiver. So all those guys, it has put us in a situation where we're further along offensively than we were last year. We've been able to add a few more wrinkles, a few more things, to give folks some problems, hopefully. If they do this, then we do this, and we're not just base kind of triple option stuff. So feel really good about where we are offensively, and we just got to keep on getting better and, do things until we absolutely can't mess them up.
Well, on the other side of the ball, you have a tradition of a ball-hawking, fundamentally sound group on defense. Who are some of the players you're counting on to lead and give us some new names that might turn some heads in 2025?
Yeah. Okay. So on defense, we had to replace a few more players. 5 starters back on defense. You're replacing, some good linebackers like Sam Twinney and Noah Duggan, who are all-region players. Jaron Payne, who was a 2-year starter at defensive end. But, we do have some bright spots. Evan Parton's playing Mike linebacker, and he's doing a really good job. Bryson Jones is a D lineman again that's, he's a big, strong kid, benched 385 pounds on Super Tiger testing this morning. Stuart Grigsby back at safety. I've been really impressed with Stuart. Last year he was trying to figure things out and learn and survive. This year, he's a leader. He gets it. He understands exactly what he's supposed to do, and he's out there chirping and leading the secondary back there. Ade Desalu, who started some defensive end last year, he's definitely a weapon in the kicking game. He'll be back. And then we got a ton of new guys that could play. Brooke Temple will be back from an injury. Brooke ran a 4.43 40 yesterday morning in Super Tiger testing. He was the fastest guy on the team. Miles Twyman ran 4.45. So our team speed is definitely up. They're not the only 2 fast guys. We got Trey Moore back, who had a collarbone injury last year. He's a 6'3", long receiver corner that's going to be an impact. We got a freshman, Ethan Height, who's a 6'3" receiver, safety, running back, linebacker, young kid J.B. Ragland, who could get some significant playing time for sure. It will be in the mix, and then we got some freshmen like Sawyer Sorrells, Jayton Mazzo, MJ Ralton, and then Matthias Sale that could be a factor in there on defense somewhere. So, we hadn't found the combination yet. We got one more week to figure out the guys, but, like I told our guys this morning, the more guys that we can trust, that know what to do, that we can roll in and play, the better it's going to make us so that we're fresher in the fourth quarter. So hopefully we're going to have some guys keep stepping up, keep getting better, and we'll be able to put a good defensive unit out there.
Well, as a follow-up to that, let's talk about the third phase here and dissect the special teams a little bit. What are the Tiger special teams going to look like this season?
So, punting and kicking wise, you have Matthias Sale and Ade that'll handle those things. They'll handle the extra points, field goals, and the punting. The snappers, we have both our snappers back from last year. Miles Twyman, who is who can snap, but also on punts, he is a asset to cover down there because he's so fast and can get down the field in people's face. And then Preston Wilson will kind of be our backup snapper on PATs and field goals and punts. So we feel pretty good about that. We started putting in special teams last week, so we're just working on getting all the little details and fundamentals and making sure the kids know how to operate them.
Well, Coach, one of the things that we picked up on about you very early on is the fact that you're very detail-oriented, very structured, organized, all the things that goes into building a successful football program, and we've watched it grow each year that you've been the head coach. So, but another thing we've picked up on as well is how creative you are in terms of finding ways to reward your players, motivate them, those sorts of things. So, talking about the black shirts, surprise trips to go swimming. I know y'all go bowling, do different things to keep things fun and team building and things like that. So tell us about how this group has bonded, in the off season, those sorts of things, team building, and what you're looking forward to most out of the 2025 season with this group specifically.
Yeah. Well, Evan Parton actually stayed with me after practice today. He wanted to watch a little extra film, make sure that he's definitely dialed in. We're on the same page on what he needs to do on the defensive side of the ball. And one of the things he said, Coach, I feel really good about this team. He said, I know we were close last year, but I feel like we have even more guys this year that are bought in to, team philosophy, bought into winning, bought into, just playing for each other and playing for Darlington. So I was really excited for him to hear that, and me and Evan have a relationship where, he's not gonna blow smoke at me. He's gonna tell me the truth always, and we have that kind of back and forth sometimes. But when it's all said and done, you want the kids to have a great experience. We don't want it to be just football. But a part of having a great football team is making sure they do come together as a brotherhood. And so, I tell the guys all the time, you have the same interest, you have the same goals in this team, and especially during the summer. I hope you guys are hanging out with each other. I hope y'all are doing things on the weekends. But we also try to take some opportunities to be able to do those things for them. So, this year I was like, man, I'm going to come up with something that I'm going to say, I told them we're going to have some country fun days this summer. And I didn't tell them what we were going to do. I just told them, show up, wear a bathing suit, wear some flip-flops, and be ready to go off campus and have some fun. So in June we had one. We showed up, and I had a couple different plans. It was actually a rainy day that day, but I had a backup plan to, we just go over to East Rome Bowling Alley. And so we went over to East Rome Bowling Alley. We bought a bunch of cheese sticks, and we bowled for a couple
Bacon,
hours.
cheddar, tater tots,
and had some good country fun. And I feel like the Darlington kids, they need a little country fun. And then in July last week, we had our OTA on Wednesday. We went to Northwest Whitfield, and we went against 5 different schools there. And so on Thursday, I told them we're going to have our second country fun day before we went into Super Tiger and Acclamation. So they showed up, and we loaded the buses, and we went to Cave Spring Pool.
Oh.
And so
it's a good time of year to jump in that water.
And it was a perfect day. Man, it was hot as all get out. We bought 15 watermelons. We put the watermelons in the creek over there, got them good and cold. We bought 22 pizzas. So every kid got a half a pizza. And then we swam in Cave Spring Pool, had a cannonball contest, and just try to make some memories that the kids would remember. And you do those things. You hope, I hope they had fun, and I do think they had fun. But I have a kid from China who had never played football before. His name's Ray Liu. Pretty cool story. Ray forgot his bathing suit. Didn't, and so I actually had bought a couple of bathing suits from Walmart that I hadn't even worn. So I gave Ray my one bathing suit. I said, man, you can go. He didn't want to go. He said, I can't go. I didn't bring my bathing suit. I said, no, you're going. You're not going to miss this. So I give Ray a bathing suit. Ray goes and has fun, man. He eats watermelon. He's freaking jumping in Cave Spring Pool. I said, Ray, we're a long way from China, aren't we? He said, yeah. He said, but this is fun. So he goes home. Later on that evening, I get an email from his dad that was just like, thank you so much, Coach, for making sure Ray didn't miss that. He had a great time at the Country Fun Day, and so, it's those experiences that'll bring the kids together that they'll remember forever. So we still try to do those things because that's extremely important as far as developing a team.
Well, Coach, one of the things we enjoy most about doing these preview shows is feeling the excitement and the intensity and the enthusiasm from the coaches about the upcoming season. And there's no doubt this conversation was a good illustration of that. You're fired up. We can tell it. We always get fired up. Listen to you talk about your team because you're so passionate about it. So last thing I want to say is thank you for your time today. I know you're super busy, and we at WLAQ really appreciate the opportunity to get some of your time and let people know what's going on with the program this time of year. So thank you, man.
Always. It's a fun time of year. Unfortunately, we're going to have to start school in a couple of weeks, so it won't be all about football. But we've tried to make this summer as best we can. I really feel good about this team. We're never going to be the biggest, the fastest, the strongest at Darlington, but these kids, they buy into the philosophy that. That's how Darlington teams in the past have been. They ain't always been the biggest, the fastest, the strongest, but what they are going to do is they're going to play extremely hard. They're going to play for each other, and they're going to represent the Darlington community like in a first-class way, like we want them to. And so if they'll do that, we'll have a good plan for, the schemes, whoever we play that week. But if we'll do that, we'll have a chance to compete and win, and that's all we want.
I like how he grinned when he said that last part about the schemes.
Yeah, he's ready.
That's exactly right. Well, thank you again, and that's going to put a wrap on this edition of our high school football preview show, this time with Coach Wayne Groves, head coach of the Darlington Tigers. And I hope everybody's enjoyed this conversation as much as we have. And we want to thank Advent Health Redmond for being our presenting sponsor, also Georgia Northwestern Technical College and Riverside Auto Group for also sponsoring these shows so that we can let people know what's going on in Rome and Floyd County high school football, and again, this time, the Darlington Tigers. That puts a wrap on our program today. For Ian Griffin and Coach Wayne Groves, I'm Matt Davis saying so long, everybody. We'll talk to you next time.
Hope you enjoyed this edition of the 2025 Rome and Floyd County High School Football Preview Shows, presented by Advent Health Redmond. Make sure you hit like and subscribe to our channel for more local content from the WLAQ Radio YouTube channel.